Carlton King, the former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation. My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations. But actually, what we really do is we kind of concentrate on geopolitics in the round. Now, that basically means that what we don't do is only look at the massive things that affect the world. We also actually zoom in. So we do the micro stuff as well, which actually just affects the world in the same way, maybe at an individual level or at a level of tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people, taking into account there's 8 billion on the planet. So what we do is we look at that because I think it's how we're affecting individuals is how we're affecting the world and how the system then begins to win. And the system, which we talk about a lot, right, is actually kind of indefinable. So, in terms of the United Kingdom, clearly one of the big systems would be the royal family. And there's been a bit of tumult because, surprise, surprise, a royal has supposedly, and I put that word supposedly, advisedly, done something wrong. Not that there's not been 1,000 years of that, but hey, surprisingly, a royal's done something wrong, and he's now lost royal, and he's just Andrew. Still living in a house free of charge, and maybe a smaller house, but he's getting it sorted out from his brother, and still actually really, if we look at it, going to live the life of Riley, but he's going to lose the title royal. Now, the grounds to that, I'm going to let Firgas, one of the thruple, tell you how that came about, and then with the other member of the thruple, Dr. Rachel Taylor, we're going to then examine the whole process, but really not just from this royal perspective, from a perspective of broken Britain, from a perspective of broken West, from a perspective of broken world, if you want to put it that way, from a perspective of potential for the world to blow itself up. So yeah, we're actually really going to delve deep into it. So first and foremost, I'm going to clap loud because we've got the throuple back together. Yay!
Yay! and I also think, on the day that we're recording this, it's Guy Fawkes night. So what a great day to I'm looking virtually at Dr. Rachel, thinking, what a great day to have that combined energy on the celebration of blowing up Parliament.
No, be careful. Let me just break it before Dr. Rachel comes in. Be very, very careful. Our democracy seems to have taken a nosedive. And there's people being arrested for suggestions taken totally out of context. So let me just say, you were not suggesting any revolutionary activity of taking any action whatsoever against Parliament or parliamentarians. I mean, they're absolutely clear. There's people being nicked for this stuff. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I've never thought I'd say this. This is me as a statesman speaking, as a guy whose task it was to look at subversion, counterinsurgency, activities against the state, counter-espionage, etc., etc., etc. And I'm saying it's gone too far. So I'm actually saying be careful. We've all got to be so careful now. You know, I read somewhere, somebody said 1,000 people have been arrested for what they wrote on the internet. I mean, this is incredible.
It is, and I will take the stance of I'm really happy to be back. And I tend to look at 5th of November not as wanting to commit acts of revolution, but what happens and what is instigated through betrayal. And I think that the UK citizens, if not all of Western society, has been extremely betrayed by the people that they supposedly voted into power.
Very, very good. I don't think anybody, any algorithm could go through what you just said there and do you over for it. This is how careful the vaunted, well, it's not a republic, is it? But the vaunted parliamentary democracy with royalty over the top has gone to, that we are now so fearful we're having to vet every word we're saying. This is incredible stuff. Fergs, kick us off, kiddo.
Nicely done, Rach. Nicely done.
Yeah.
So look,
Thank you.
we're about 3 weeks in to the posthumous autobiography of Virginia Roberts Giuffre, which is called Nobody's Girl, and it is currently smashing the bestseller lists pretty much everywhere. I mean, I think it's I think it's probably bestseller in over 30 countries at the moment, and it's as far as I know only in English. It's a posthumous memoir co-written with a biography writer called Amy Wallace. And the book launch itself kind of became this massive news moment because it reignited the scrutiny of Prince Andrew and the Epstein Maxwell scandals. I would say the media coverage of it was quite interesting. And look, I've read the book, and I won't lie, it is a tragic story. The Mail called it something like the saddest book ever written. I mean, I would dispute that. I mean, I would say something like The Bell Jar, or
I'd like to say
the Diary of Anne Frank.
Yeah, the Grapes of Wrath is a very sad story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, we could go down that literary route. However, the Mail made a very sort of sweeping statement. It is a necessary book, I mean, it does talk about her side of the story. It does talk about her life outside of the scandals that we know about, because they involve celebrities. So it talks about her personal life prior to meeting Jeffrey Epstein, and it talks about her life after that. She did tragically commit suicide, and it sounds as though her life was extremely challenged and compromised. She suffered child abuse. She was involved in human trafficking before she met Epstein, and then, unfortunately, she was in an abusive marriage with several children involved, and was then there was a court order that prevented her from seeing her children. She was involved in a horrific car accident, and then finally took her own life. The news coverage, however, really, really, really went hard on Prince Andrew. So I think the Guardian broke the story first in the UK. They they were sort of pushing for more change. Andrew's already stripped of his titles, but they're pushing him for him to be stripped of his property. And I mean, I think at the time of recording, he is stripped of his property. And the Telegraph sort of said, this is the only book on the, they sort of said this is the only book on the subject that truly matters. And it called Epstein, it called Andrew Maxwell and Epstein villains. And the Times, I think, actually published an excerpt from it, and they sort of said they took the stance that she never stood a chance, and kind of lent into the systemic failures across her life. And you kind of get to thinking, well, this woman came out of the situation. Look, the bottom line is we're not condoning we're not standing up for human trafficking. We're not saying that any of this level of grooming or child sex abuse is correct. But in context, this woman came out of the situation very wealthy. So I think when the Times kind of say, "Oh, she never stood a chance," well, I mean, I believe she's got a foundation now that's worth millions. And but then kind of ITV and the BBC and the straight news kind of just went straight for the jugular with Andrew, like absolutely straight for the jugular. You know, he, he's a disgrace to the family. He's, and when you actually read the book, and I have, I am, as I always do, playing devil's advocate here. Again, I'm not standing up for this man, and I'm not standing up for the society that was around him, and I'm not standing up for his behaviour. But essentially, the incidents seem to involve 3 sexual acts, one of which seemed pretty tame. I mean, I think Prince Andrew, when he was formerly known as Randy Andy, was kind of famous for toe sucking celebrities, wasn't he? And so there's a kind of toe sucking episode, and I think she reports in the book something like, afterwards in his English gentleman's voice, he said thank you. And then I think there's another one-on-one sex encounter, and then there's an orgy that involves 8 other girls who, it would seem from the book, spoke very little English. So I'm suggesting that there's a few issues for discussion here. One is, the posthumous analysis of the ethics. The second is, is Andrew a scapegoat? Is the media, as they so often do, and so often historically do, and including so often historically have done with Prince Andrew, using this royal/celebrity status, using this royal scandal to whitewash over broken Britain. When we've got a country where knife wielding maniacs are boarding trains and killing bystanders, are we sort of in our right minds to be making such a furore about a very privileged man sucking a 17-year-old girl?
Before Dr. Rachel comes in, sorry, Fergus, continue.
No, and then I mean, maybe we want to talk about human trafficking in a broader sense as well. But I mean, I'd like to kick it off really by saying, but by saying, I used to do the publicity for a DJ called Sam Young, lovely, lovely, lovely guy. Sam Young is the son of Richard Young, who's a celebrity. He's probably the most famous celebrity photographer, the most famous paparazzi. He, again, really, really nice guy. He famously took that picture of Kate Moss in the 90s where he used too much flash on her dress and you could see her naked underneath her dress. But anyway, Sam Young used to DJ at all those private nightclubs where royals and rich girls used to go. And on a Wednesday night, on any given Wednesday night, in a club called Mahiki's in Kensington, you would find, or Bougie's, that was the other one, right? But you would find underage girls trying to bag a royal. I mean, all the young princes used to go there in their partying days, and all the, sort of affluent teenagers would go there as well. I mean, it was a sort of regular joint for rich kids. So, I mean, in context, I mean, God, if we even wanted to delve down delve back into the annals of history. I mean, how many, like, look at someone like Lady Jane Grey or something. I mean, how many royal kings married teenagers? I mean, probably loads. Um, so there's a bit in the book where she says,
Let me come in because I think we might just have lost Fergus for a second. Regular listeners will know that Fergus is now recording from a place where it's a bit more difficult to get the internet. So yeah, let me just say what I was going to say. And I think
"What? Sorry, Carlton.
Oh, right, brilliant.
What point did you lose me at? Sorry.
Yeah, Lady Jane Grey.
What did you lose me at?
Lady Jane Grey.
Oh yeah, okay. So look, there are loads of examples of kings who married teenagers or even younger. And there's a bit in the Virginia Roberts book where she talks about, where she says her quote is something like, Andrew assumed that having sex with me was his birthright, and again, to play devil's advocate, he probably did. He probably did. I mean, he was grown up with generations of all of this, and you know, I think in terms of, whilst there's no quite challenging that it's entitlement, I think he felt that he was entitled.
I think before Dr. Rachel comes in, what I just want to say is a couple of things, and then again I'll open it for Rachel to put her sort of opening comments on the process, and probably might even put some medical aspects to it. Who knows? But I would say this: we can't undermine what the unfortunately dead person now has said because she became wealthy. So she became wealthy. We just got to take that as it was. What I will say is that for me, looking at it, I say, what is the crime that has been committed? Okay, so in the United Kingdom, if you are 16 years of age and you voluntarily involve yourself in a sexual act with somebody, I don't care if that person's 100, right? There is no crime. Okay, that's just the way it is, right? We've set an age. The age is 16. Now, your historical reference, Lady Jane Grey or whomever, and you put it in context of the royals, you don't need to put it in context of the royals. You can probably scratch very, very, very many great grandparents. I'm saying that because I'm already a grandparent. Let's say a great grandparents generation before me. And you'll probably see on many of them a big age difference between the male and the female. Sometimes the other way around, but you can see it between the male and female, particularly in places, and we go around the world with this program, so particularly in places like the United States, Australia, Canada, places where Europeans have gone out to basically take the land from the indigenous peoples. But because they've gone out that way, generally females are in demand and males were in great numbers. So when females may or may not have died off, or they didn't take an indigenous female or whatever, they look for other females, and lo and behold, they take young females. So, many people living today, and that's not even then going down the avenue of something even more despicable of slave masters, example, taking people in the slave trade, or anywhere else. I'm not just talking about the African slave trade now. It could be in anywhere and any colour of people who in those days, and I'm only talking 1900s now, was relatively prevalent throughout various empires. You will see a massive age difference. So this age difference thing isn't anything new, and not really something that you can turn around and say has to be wrong always, because I'm sure many a great grandparents lived a happy life and people seen those great grandparents and said, oh, they were brilliant, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure there were some that weren't. So that in itself shouldn't be a problem. My mind, I haven't really looked at this issue other than the issue from my game, okay, and from the intelligence aspect of my game, Okay, so the secret intelligence aspect. I've looked at it from the perspective of who was Epstein, who was he working for, and what intel was being gained from all of this. That's why I've looked at it. Frankly, that's been it. Because the other bits, I've seen people at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24-year-olds saying, oh, I was flown to an island on a private jet. I was paid, I think DeFay said herself, she was paid 17,000 to be with Andrew. I was paid X amount of money. I was abused. Now, to me, that's kind of saying that you've got no agency. Because if you go to a normal working class girl and you turn around to her and say, listen, I'm going to give you 5 grand, 4 grand, 3 grand, 1 grand to get in my car and let me drive you to somewhere, many a normal, everyday working class girl would turn around and say, no, because you're only after one thing. So why is it that people who supposedly purport to know better jump onto a private plane, fly to a private island, not just once, several occasions, carry out and not just not just male, because female, because I know he was doing this with males as well, which suggested to me, yeah, I can see how any intelligence agency is using this to and there's 2 primary agencies that we know about that may well have been involved, and it is said often, which would be the Mossad and the CIA. In tandem, not in tandem, who knows? But the bottom line is, because I'm not involved in that process with them, but the bottom line is we know that the agency was getting feeds from all of this. And so therefore, male or female being utilized in this way gives a lot of power to people who want to then direct how a state or various states function vis-a-vis their state. That's how I've looked at it 9 times out of 10. This Prince Andrew stuff, I'll be truthful, I'll put my hands up, I don't like the fella. But that's just my own personal feelings. But what I'm trying to say is that we are fed a picture when the bigger picture sits around us, and the bigger picture we're not even looking at. And this happens all the time.
Yeah.
Dr. Rachel.
I completely agree with you, Carlton. And I'm going to give a disclaimer to listeners is that, I didn't really want to discuss the Andrew stuff and the book stuff because there's no new information. All of this information has already been around for at least 15 years, if not more. And the way I look at it is that they choose the media, which we know is controlled by those in power, decide what is the latest bread and circus stories that they want out there. And everybody's distracted by it, everybody's focused on it. I mean, I will say this though, it's something that I have been thinking about a lot in terms of how victims are treated, and victims who are dead are treated far more favorably and they're kind of made into martyrs. If this woman was still alive, I very much doubt whether this would be, as as big as it is, because the Western society doesn't like to allow victims to have much voice, and we've seen this in sort of the grooming gangs fiasco and how the inquiry there is being run. Those girls who are involved in that, who really were exploited because they were all under 16, have not been allowed to have an inquiry into what happened to them, how they were treated, as to how they would want it to be. So I'm kind of with you, Carlton, on this. I'm always very suspicious because, if people are naive enough to think that the king didn't know all of this prior to this book coming out, then they're in more trouble than they would want to think that they are, because we are always sort of fed stories, fed narrative. And your listeners will have heard me speak before about how this influences our limbic system, how we react emotionally to things, and therefore how we're going to act emotionally to other things that are coming. And all of this is coming out in the backdrop of, as Ferg described it, broken Britain, but it's not just broken Britain, is that there's whole demographics within this country who are feeling the depression, feeling the complete oppression from those in charge. And are we expected to be okay with Andrew being used as a scapegoat, and he's had his big house taken off him, but he's being banished to Sandringham, where he's going to be given a smaller house, but it's not that much smaller. He won't be expected to fend for himself, all of these things. And then it was really interesting because I was actually thinking, when they were threatening to take his medals away from him and his vice admiral honor, and I'm thinking, but he did fight in the Falklands. He was in active war, and it's like really complex in everything they're doing. And I thought, hang on a minute, I'm being as distracted by this story as everybody else is. So it's working as designed.
Correct.
Yeah, do you know what though, Rach? I mean,
and you can speak to that, Fergus. Is this a design? Speak to it, please.
Well, do you know what? I'm being completely flippant, and I hope listeners will appreciate that being flippant. But honestly, to Dr. Rachel's earlier point, I think if Virginia Roberts Giuffre was alive today, producers would be trying to get her on Celebrity Love Island or something.
Oh, I'm a celebrity, get me here.
Yeah, exactly, right.
So Fergus, but tell me seriously now. Seriously, just tell me. Sorry, Fergus, I just want to say, just tell the viewers, how are these stories chosen? Because Andrew could be off limits for quite a while, and he has been. But then there's an open season. So how's that chosen? How is change made? Can you explain that as a top journalist? Can you explain that?
Well, look, historically, a royal story will always knock every other story out of the ballpark, which is, in terms of burying bad news, it's a really, really helpful tactic. But just to go back to what Dr. Rachel was saying about, what you were both saying about how does the Queen not know about it, or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, look, he had a history of all of this. I mean, again, whilst we're not writing this off, or we're not supporting his actions as alleged in this book. Do you remember when he was Air Miles Andy and he was basically taking his helicopter everywhere and racking up massive bills for the public, and then he had some dodgy property deal, Sunning Hill Park, I think it was called, and he basically
worldwide deal
was yeah, and he sold it to some Kazakh oligarch or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was involved with Libyan smugglers and with I mean, all sorts of things. But I mean, like, and then that's before you even start on the Randy Andy stuff. I mean, he had so many
none of those things.
He was linked with so many models,
exactly. But none of those things, Fergs, were delved into fully. So
there's something else as well, Carlton. In that one of his daughters, I can't remember which one, her wedding was paid for by the Rothschilds.
Yes, this is the point. Why? So why are you now jumping? I'm asking you as a journalist, right? Why are journals now being given the authority to jump in? That's my big question.
I'm just going to pass it over to. I will answer this question, but I'm just going to pass it over to Rachel Esack because I'm just going to reset my internet a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, Rach, please.
Well, for me, it's like I said before, it's all part of the Bread and Circus Act. So you're allowed to, it's almost like it's following a playbook. And, all of this, I don't even understand the furore because where is the new information? Where is it? There is no new information. So for me, it's like, very much a playbook as what can we use to distract the masses? And, the king has to be seen to be doing something, definitive and making a move. There's nothing new. And this is something that's really annoying for me. And I'd like to ask your listeners if they could put comments under, because I'd be really interested to know is that, have you learned anything new about this whole debacle in the past 2 months? Anything that's different to suggest that this is the time when he should be stripped of his titles, and he's been stripped of his, all of his royal titles, and why he's suddenly being ousted from where the Windsor Grace and Favour House, and to be banished to Sandringham. Is anything new there? No, there's not. But if I've
Sand-
missed something, I will stand to be corrected.
Sandringham is hardly Siberia. Look.
Is
The
he not
problem,
sending him to the gulags?
this is the problem, isn't it? This is
But that's
how
how it's been described, though,
exactly.
Carlton.
This
As
is
if
how they're
he's gone.
fooling the
Yeah,
people. They fooled the people. You are being banished to Sandringham. You have to give up a whatever number of bedroom home it is, and you're going to go
yeah,
into another big bedroom home, right?
yeah,
None of which you've ever paid for, right?
yeah,
The Queen, the Queen knows nothing. Wouldn't it be terrible for the Queen? She's paid out 12 million quid to get the bloke off the hook.
yeah,
Probably of our money. So
yeah,
let's be realistic about this whole thing. And
yeah,
what bothers me is that we're spending a lot of time on this when the United Kingdom is actively taking actions against Russia
yeah,
that are dangerous to every citizen in this country. We
yeah,
are actively killing Russians, right? And then we will be surprised when someday a Russian actually does something back.
yeah.
We're playing at
Well,
a level whereby, we are sending our cruise missiles, which can only be controlled by us and the American, I should say, because I keep it all real, right, for us and the American, because the American over our systems, oftentimes the American also has a feed into, and the control systems, the gyros, etc., are done by the American. So therefore, the American has to have a feed on it as well. But the reality is that they are our Storm Shadow weapons being fired into Russia, supposedly by Ukrainians. The targeting packages are given to the Ukrainians by us for them to send it. And then we're attacking Russians and Russian civilians at that and killing them, right?
mm,
And one day, when something happens and President Putin can't keep a lid on it, because right now that's the only guy, I believe, keeping a lid on what Russian retaliation is. Right.
mm,
But nobody says anything. This is the point I'm making. We're talking about Prince Andrew. So let me take another issue. You've got 500, well, it's not nice, but 750,000 Sudanese dead. You've got probably the same number of Palestinians dead, okay, where we've been assisting the people killing them, right? Again, what's said? Nothing, right? And you can go on and on and on down the line to the fact that a guy who clearly has mental health problems, I'd like you to come in on this, Dr. Rachel, gets on
mm,
board a train, whereas the night before he attacks somebody in a barber shop, he attacks somebody on the street, this guy, and he should have he's been known to mental health facilities, right?
mm,
But the guy's come on and he's lost it and he's gone around trying to kill people, right? So we spent this year something like, I think it's 6 billion. Don't quote me for it. Definitely 3, but I think it's 6 altogether, sending monies to the Ukraine, right? Of which, and this is not my figures, okay, the National Accounting Office of the United States, okay, put up by the President of the United States, who put it on his True Social, said half of the money, he put it Biden, but it's not just Biden, it's us and the Europeans, are sending them, is stolen,
mm,
repeat, stolen by the Ukrainians. So
mm,
we're sending money that we know is stolen and we still keep sending it.
mm.
The arms that we send to them, they sell on to other places. And they did that from day one of the first part of the war, right? So what I'm saying is, why are we doing this when we've got fellas who probably could have been aided if we'd have had a couple of quid back that would have said, okay, this guy needs some mental health
Mm.
assistance. You'll know this because it's your field. So
Yeah.
why are we throwing money away? Why are we doing this? And nobody's asking any questions. Oh, 1 or 2 immigrants come onto our beaches. What? Screaming, right?
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
spending billions. We've got many, 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 many more Ukrainians living in the United Kingdom. No problem, because they're doing okay. But why are they doing okay? Because from the day they arrive, they're allowed to work, go to school, and
Mm.
do anything else they need to do. But
Yeah.
everybody else can't do that.
Yeah.
So doesn't it show to you that when you do allow people to actually work, do whatever they need to do, pay taxes, that you get a better situation than when you say to them, no, you can't. But
Yeah.
nobody questions it again. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? This broken situation around you.
Well,
You
a
get them
complete,
buying
yeah.
houses, politicians, right? And then turn around and say, oh, when I was renting my house, I didn't know that I had to do this tax or that tax. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
You are a person who is meant to be the housing minister for one, and you can't understand what you need to do in terms of renting. You've
Yeah.
now got yourself a problem. You are a chancellor for one, you're not meant to know all about the finances, and you don't know what you're doing with the renting of your facility
Mm.
in terms of paying the taxes you should be paying. This is what I'm saying. This
Yeah.
Germans would call it Ablenkung, this thing where you pretend and push yourself somewhere else so the public
Yeah.
don't see it, is incredible. That's my rant.
Yeah. I mean,
Please
it's
go for it.
interesting you're talking about the Ukraine, Carlton, because actually, from with both direct and indirect costs, since the start of the war, it's actually cost the UK 106 billion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was just talking about this here.
106
Absolutely.
billion, and we haven't got enough money to ensure that UK citizens feel safe and secure and actually valued by their government. It's ridiculous, really. And so the mental health issues, it's really interesting because you can kind of sort of dial it back to when care in the community was brought in, which,
Agreed. Agreed.
yeah. But you know what's interesting is that in the very sector of healthcare where you would need to have the most care and compassion, actually, there's a huge deficit. And the health services in general, and I am not saying there's not good people, but good people working in a bad system will actually act to the culture of that system. And I challenge people to actually come up with any instance where there's somebody who has got a chronic condition, such as, long-standing mental health or any other kind of chronic condition, is treated with care, compassion, and respect within the health, because there's not. They're very good at patching people up, but really bad at looking after people. And that's kind of where we are in the UK, is that, you know, we're so used to short-termism, and this feeds back into sort of the whole Andrew thing, is that it's chip paper, isn't it? We're focusing on this, and then next week there'll be something else, and the week after something else. Is that if this is what should have happened to him, if the royal family were taking it seriously, that actually you do not exploit power, and this kind of fits into what Fergus was saying in her third point about discussing about human trafficking, human exploitation. If you are not going to say that we abuse power, we abuse our privilege, we abuse our standing in society, then they should have done this 15 years ago. But they chose now to do it. And why now? Because there's always a time and a place. You keep things in the back pocket. You know this, Carlton. What kind of things were kept in the back pocket of every spy agency so they could use it when the time was right?
Agreed. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You're going to
absolutely.
get no argument for me.
I'm just going to pick up on the whole. I just wanted to quickly interject about the relocation to Sandringham thing, but on that. No, this is a slight tangent, but roll with it. So on the day that this book came out was the same day that Kate Lamb said that essentially families, legally settled families, should be deported. But yeah, the poor Andrew, he's got to move to a 8-bedroom mansion.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually, it's staggering. And do you know what's even more staggering? It's like every day I feel that intelligence is insulted. And Carlton, you're quite right at the start of this. Be careful of what you say, because they'll come and knock on your door.
True.
It's like we cannot say anything for fear of offending people, and yet we are being treated as idiots, which to me is the greatest offense that I can take, for thinking that I'm going to stand by and allow myself to be treated like an idiot.
The problem is, Rachel, we do vet ourselves because we know how powerful this process is.
Yeah.
And it bothers me because I thought for 30 years of my life plus I was doing a good thing. But when I look at it, And I see now how this thing has just morphed to nonsense. I mean, morphed to, yes, okay, the pen is mightier than the sword. Yeah, but not when it's Joe Soap saying a few bits and baps, and you're going to give him 2.5 years, 3 years, him or her, three
Yeah.
years in prison. It's nonsense. I mean, it's not, yet still you'll see somebody who's committed an offence and they say, oh, well, yeah, we'll give you suspended. Why? Because there's no places in prison. I mean, this is just lunacy. I
Yeah.
mean, and then where's the challenges? In the past, you'd have people who'd stand up and challenge things. In Parliament, you'd have
Yeah.
somebody stand up and challenge them, and we can all think about great people who would have done that. Who would turn around, from Joe Kaufman to whomever, who would say, this is genocide. Boom. Yeah. This
Yeah.
should not be happening. Boom. Whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
You'd have people stand up and say something. Where are those people now?
Yeah. I
Where
mean,
are they?
I completely agree. And I'm going to share something with you and the listeners is that I have been seriously thinking about doing a law conversion course and becoming a barrister because I'm so distressed at how the public are being subjected to so much unlawfulness,
Mhm.
so many bends of legal framework, and it just doesn't seem like the quangos and the agencies that are charged by the government to do a job actually do the job which they are legally meant to do. Because, where are the people who are meant to protect? Where do we go for protection against, you know, you're quite right when you said the Chancellor should know what licenses she needs. If I submit my limited accounts every year and an accountant does them for me, but if I've not checked, if I've not double checked what is being submitted, I can't say, well, my accountant did it. I've been the one
Absolutely.
prosecuted.
Correct.
I've been the one held to, it's my company accounts, so I'm therefore responsible for them, even if I outsource for other people to do it. How have we arrived at this position where nobody takes responsibility or nobody's accountable for what they do?
Look, there wasn't a golden age. We know that.
Yeah.
We know there wasn't a golden age. But I think, and this is what tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that many people did things in the belief that they were correct. Now, there wasn't a golden age. Let's forget that. We were never, on a white steed saying we're the people who are doing the best thing. Never was the case. Totally. But I think at least there were people there who, when they thought that it was wrong, stood up and questioned. Now I'm seeing very, very few because, frankly, where does it get you?
Exactly.
Where
Yeah.
does it get you?
Yeah.
I asked that question, and that's why I wanted Fergs to answer this media question, because I can think of, I put my head on, and we all know John Pilger and some other people who would speak out in the normal mass media. But where are those people in the mass media now? There aren't, are they? You might find them in the internet, yeah, sure. But where are they in the mass media? Where are these people who would speak truth to power? Where are they now? Fergs, I know people hold stuff
Yeah,
back.
okay, Carlton. So yes, that's true. The Okay, so look, there's two sides to this answer, I suppose. There's the really glib side, which is that, as I said before, a royal scandal will knock everything
Sure.
off will literally hold the front page. It doesn't need to be in depth. And it doesn't need to be exclusive, and to all intents and purposes it will run and run. um I know investigative journalists, and if you look at organizations like the Frontline Club, or I know a lot of political or war journalists who go out. I mean, maybe undercover, maybe not undercover. Maybe they just have a hunch. Maybe they're investigating, something they saw on social media, and and it takes a while because sometimes it's sometimes the root of the story is not obvious, and when you're going to a story where the source, you're going to a story that's potentially in another country. It's not it's obviously not as in depth as as your level of intelligence, Carlton, um, but so for example, I know someone who has a story about a Ukraine arms deal. And that's all I'll say on this. However, um, he's been trying for about 6 months to get this story published, because no one will take the risk on it. Because at the end of the day, you're putting you're putting your head above the parapet, I suppose.
Correct.
And uh, there are titles like Politico or something that potentially do um do run those sorts of stories in a kind of very top line way, but to get a story like that into even a broadsheet is incredibly difficult. And um this particular journalist that I know has had it almost to publication with a couple of big titles, and then at the last minute it's just shut down by the lawyers because the lawyers just say we can't take that risk.
You see, so this is the point I'm making, though, because and you're absolutely right, and that person's got to look after their livelihood and etc. etc. And the state which we're in is supporting the process of what's going on in the Ukraine and the lies that are going on in the Ukraine. So therefore he'd be going against the state, and it's a very lonely place to be. So I can imagine this gal doesn't want to put their head above the parapet. So I totally and utterly understand that. What I'm saying though is that the targets you choose, why are they chosen? That's the point. And why is it now Andrew's turn when there's a whole host of things that Rawls have done, probably worse, that hasn't come to the fore. And I give you an example. This furore about Charing Cross Police Station. This guy has gone into Charing Cross Police Station, and for 7 months he has done so-called undercover journalism, where he's carried with him a film, a camera, a hidden camera, and he's filmed things. He's actually committed offences, because what he did on one of them is he heard that a sergeant said, "Oh, we sorted this lad out," which he didn't sort him out. If I'd have said to him, go to practically any police in the world, within a day he'd have come back with 20 times what he had in Britain. So that's the reality of it. He really had nothing. He had people talking a good job, but none of it was proved. One fella saying, "Oh, so I did his fingers in and hurt his fingers." And they had to say at the end, "Oh, well, there's no evidence of this." No, so the point I'm saying is that they're saying things because it's an easy hit. So, but two things I ask myself: why is the commissioner then standing up saying, "Oh, sorry for this, let's get rid of all these people," when he clearly, the guy who acted as a journalist, one thing it is to be a whistleblower, and I'm all for whistleblowers. So you join an organization, it's not right, and you say it's not right. That's great. But for you to join an organization where you sign a paper to say you're joining the organization correctly, you've signed the Official Secrets Act, which you had to do to be a guy who was basically in the custody suite. He'd have signed the Official Secrets Act, right? But then what you do is you hear something that you think you can use salaciously, you go onto a police computer system against the GDPR clearly, you type in, you see a video of it, and you film that video on your secret camera, and then you put that video to the world. That clearly is an offence under 3 or 4 different acts. So why is this guy not been charged? So this is what I'm saying. There's a complicity in this process somewhere along the line, and I want to understand what it is. So that was part 1 of this week's Black Spy podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll have part 2 next week.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.